In tonight's news edition, His Majesty the King welcomes a group of dignitaries and chieftains from Tafile to discuss challenges facing their governorate, promising them better days to come. Fighting continues to rage in Syria in the offensive to take control of Raqqa, and the UNHCR says the number of Syrian refugees has passed the 5 million mark. And the British Defence Secretary says Gibraltar would be completely protected and the sovereignty of the enclave cannot be changed without the agreement of its people. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. His Majesty King Abdullah met with dignitaries and chieftains of Tafile, telling them as they arrived at the royal court they are welcomed in the home of all Jordanians. His Majesty told the group representing Tafile that he has given instructions to the government to speed up the construction of the industrial estate in the governorate to attract investments and create new work opportunities, listing a number of projects in the pipeline. His Majesty urged more attention to agricultural schemes in Tafile and support to small and medium-sized projects to empower households and improve their living standards. King Abdullah also discussed with the Tafile locals such issues as security threats and efforts to defeat radical and extremist groups, as well as economic challenges facing the kingdom, assuring them that comprehensive development will touch their governorate alongside other areas of Jordan. On the recent Arab summit in Jordan, His Majesty said the summit has served to build bridges of understanding between Arab states and to achieve a common vision on the future of joint Arab action. The meeting is part of His Majesty's efforts to stay in close touch with Jordanians and listen to their needs of their regions. Prime Minister Hani al-Mulki said the government's energy policy has attracted Arab and foreign investments worth an estimated $5 billion. Mulki was speaking at the opening of the 3rd Jordanian International Energy Summit, delivering a speech on behalf of His Majesty the King in the presence of Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources Ibrahim Saif and Her Royal Highness Princess Sumaya bint al-Hassan, President of the Royal Scientific Society. He said Jordan's energy policy has sought to raise the energy sector's efficiency and attract local and foreign private sector investors, aiming to increase the ratio of renewable energy. Solar and wind energy projects underway are expected to generate 1,500 megawatts of power, with hopes the share of renewable energy would amount to 20% of the total energy mix by 2020. Representatives of 45 countries are attending the meeting with a focus on Jordan's energy sector as the energy hub for the region. On the sidelines of the 3rd Jordanian International Energy Meeting, the Prime Minister witnessed the signing of 7 agreements and memoranda of understanding in the energy sector. The agreements signed between the Jordanian and Egyptian governments and involved a number of private sector companies from both countries aimed at facilitating trade in natural and liquefied gas. The Chief Chamberlain, His Royal Highness Prince Hashem bin al-Hussein, graduated a group of armed forces personnel of the Joint Special Operations Command who completed an advanced first aid training course. Prince Hashem deputizing for His Majesty the King at the initiation ceremony. The ceremony included a drill by the graduates on how to provide first aid and deal with different emergency scenarios. To Iraq, where Iraqi forces fighting Daesh in Mosul put their fighting on hold as the offensive reached the city's densely populated areas to open safe passageways for civilians at risk. The fighting is still focused on the neighborhood surrounding the Al-Nouri Mosque, which continues to be held by Daesh. The United Nations say several hundred civilians have been killed in the last month, and residents say the terrorists are using them as human shields. At least 355,000 residents have fled fighting in Mosul, according to the Iraqi government, and some 400,000 civilians remain trapped inside the densely populated old city.
This is our sector in Bab al-Jadid. Right now we have advancement operations to the center of the old city to liberate it within the coming days. Currently there's a delay to open safe passageways for families and residents towards the safe areas and camps.
And over to Syria, where U.S.-backed Syrian forces repelled a major counterattack by Daesh terrorists holding out at the country's largest dam and in the nearby town of Tabqa. The Syrian Democratic Forces SDF began an assault to capture the strategic dam and the nearby town almost 2 weeks ago after the coalition landed some of its fighters on the southern side of the Euphrates near Tabqa. As the fighting continues, hundreds of families continue to flee from villages under Daesh control. The U.S.-backed forces say at least 7,000 people have taken shelter in their areas since the campaign to capture Tabqa. While the SDF denies civilians are targeted, last month strikes believed to be conducted by the U.S.-led coalition hit a bakery and a local market in the town, with dozens of civilians killed. Another raid that hit a school sheltering displaced people near Raqqa also killed scores. Meanwhile, the UNHCR is calling on Gulf Arab states to give more to help Syrians displaced by the war. Deputy UNHCR Commissioner Kelly Clements said she saw little sign the crisis would end anytime soon, with the number of refugees fleeing Syria passing the 5 million mark. Clements was speaking in Kuwait at the signing of an aid agreement for Syrian refugees with the Kuwaiti Fund for Arab Economic Development. Clements said Kuwait is the 6th largest donor to UNHCR, providing some $360 million between 2013 and 2015. Apart from the 5 million refugees, there were some 13.5 million people who have been displaced inside Syria, according to the UN, with an estimated 1.5 million children out of school. In the latest of a spat of fires to hit tall buildings in the United Arab Emirates, a tower being built in Dubai's downtown district caught on fire, and firefighters scrambled to get it under control. The blaze started in the early hours of the morning and sent flames and black smoke into the air, causing roads around the building to be closed. The Dubai Media Office Twitter account later announced that the fire was under control with cooling operations underway and no injuries reported. Building and safety experts have cited a highly flammable cladding that covers the building as the cause of the inferno. British Defense Secretary Michael Fallon said Gibraltar would be completely protected during an interview on BBC's Andrew Marr show. Fallon said the sovereignty of Gibraltar cannot be changed without the agreement of its people, who made it very clear they do not want to live under Spanish rule. The interview came a day after the European Union proposed offering Spain a right to veto over Gibraltar's future trade relations with the bloc. The veto would give Madrid sway over the fate of the enclave once Britain has left the bloc, and the status of its overseas territory is no longer an internal EU matter. Voters in Gibraltar rejected the idea of Britain sharing sovereignty with Spain by 99% to 1% in 2002, but overwhelmingly backed remaining in the EU in June's Brexit referendum.
I'm not concerned that if we take Gibraltar first, I think there's no question whatever that our government will stand by Gibraltar. 35 years ago this week, another woman Prime Minister sent a task force halfway across the world to defend the freedom of another small group of British people against another Spanish-speaking country. And I'm absolutely certain that our current Prime Minister will show the same resolve in standing by the people of Gibraltar.
Just days after Britain triggered Article 50 to leave the European Union, several thousand Pulse of Europe demonstrators marched in Germany. Demonstrators marched through the streets in Frankfurt and in Berlin's public square, expressing support for a unified Europe. Several held placards of the Pulse of Europe movement, a grassroots initiative started in Frankfurt with the aim of keeping Europe united. Demonstrators have been gathering for several non-partisan rallies across Germany's cities in recent months as apprehension has increased following Britain's decision to leave the bloc. This demonstrator is British, and here's what he had to say.
This is my city, these are my people, and I've always felt very welcome here, and I hope I will still feel very welcome here in Germany even after Brexit. And I also want future generations of British kids to have the chances I had as a child to come to Germany to learn German, to understand about Europe. So I'm very, very happy that things like this are happening. It's better that the demo happens before the problem happens rather than afterwards, which is what happened in the UK.
In Colombia, families and rescuers continued to search desperately through mud-plastered rubble for victims of flooding and landslides that killed over 250 people and left hundreds injured. Entire neighborhoods were devastated in the capital, Mocoa, as Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos declared a state of emergency. This report has more.
Waking up to devastation. Colombians hit by one of the worst landslides in years. Over 200 people are estimated to have died in the disaster, which hit Mocoa, the capital of the country's Putumayo province. Heavy rains caused several rivers to overflow, pushing sediment onto buildings and roads. Over 1,000 soldiers and police drafted in to help with the rescue effort across 17 affected neighborhoods. They say at least 400 further people have been injured and 200 are still missing. And it's not just the human cost. Bridges and roads have been destroyed too, with much of the area now unrecognisable. The scale of this disaster is significant, even for a country with fairly frequent landslides. Colombia's deadliest landslide in 1985 was the Armero disaster. It killed more than 20,000 from a single town.
A prized Warhol Mao painting is sold for $12.6 million at a Sotheby's evening sale in Hong Kong. The portrait of the former Chinese leader Mao Zedong by Andy Warhol made less than it was expected, the $15 million. The portrait, which was sold to a private agent collector, has increased nearly 20% in value since it was on sale 3 years ago in London. Warhol began his series of silkscreen portraits of the Chinese leader in 1972, when ties between then Cold War foes China and the U.S. began to thaw after the historic trip to Beijing by U.S. President Richard Nixon.
For 100,000 at 6,500,000. The last row is there. All through at 1,600,000. Not yours, Nikki. 1,700,000.
While being attractive celebrity,
The second stop of the World Surf League Championship Tour in Australia witnessed intense competition as surfers battled for the opportunity to advance through the final series of the drug-aware Margaret River Pro. The competitors fought through waves reaching 1.5 meters to determine the women's semi-finalists and men's quarter-finalists. Six-time champion Stephanie Gilmore of Australia went through to the semi-finals after beating compatriot Nikki Van Dieck. While in the men's division, defending event winner Sebastian Zietz of the U.S. was eliminated by Brazilian challenger Felipe Toledo. From sunny Australia, we move to freezing Norway. A total of 350 snow-kiters braved tough weather, with only 8 managing to finish the 130-kilometer course in the allotted 5 hours in the longest ever Red Bull Ragnarok. German Felix Kirsten dominated the men's ski event to finish in 3 hours 40 minutes, roughly half an hour ahead of second-place Swiss Bruce Kessler. while Britain's Stephanie Bridge won the women's event. And finally, low temperatures continue for the rest of tonight with partly cloudy skies and continued rain showers, especially in the southern and eastern regions. A low of 4 degrees is expected in Amman with northwesterly moderate to brisk winds, stirring dust in the southern and eastern regions. Tomorrow it continues to be cold in most regions with northeasterly moderate winds. While in the Gulf of Aqaba, warm conditions prevail with northerly moderate winds and slightly high seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To end the news, here's a reminder of our top stories. His Majesty the King welcomes a group of dignitaries and chieftains from Tafila to discuss challenges facing their governorate, promising them better days to come. Fighting continues to rage in Syria in the offensive to take control of Raqqa, and the UNHCR says the number of Syrian refugees has passed the 5 million mark. And the British Defence Secretary says Gibraltar would be completely protected and the sovereignty of the enclave cannot be changed without the agreement of its people. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Nancy Khair. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.